Thank you very much, and welcome to our Unite on Brand panel discussion. Uniting on travel and tourism with today's leading industry experts is the theme of our discussion. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us and to BoB for putting together this amazing summit. I'm Alison Cryer, founder of Representation Plus and Easy Virtual Events. Purposeful travel can only be achieved by the industry as a whole by uniting to restart travel and tourism through education, developing a new trading economy, and having an impact on achieving the UN sustainability goals by leading brands. COVID has shown us that we can no longer work in silos, and we need to collaborate at all levels. World inbound arrivals are down 57%, and it is anticipated that it will take 3 to 5 years for recovery back to 2019 levels. With 75% reduction at the moment in international travel in the short to medium term, and 21% of global consumers saying they won't return to pre-COVID levels of travel. These are all Euromonitor's recent statistics. They are also saying that 46% of people are showing a shift in attention to how brands treat people. This is very, very important to us all today, as I have 3 leading brands in our industry on my panel, who I am going to introduce to you and ask them to talk to you and explain to you where they're from and what their purpose is. First of all, I'm going to kick off by saying that I've spent over 30 years in this industry that I am passionate about. I started as a hotel general manager, moved on to launch the Copthall Hotel brands for an airline company, and then to found Representation Plus, a marketing company, and Easy Virtual Events. My purpose is shifting tourism for tomorrow's adventures. I'd now like to introduce Richard Carret of the Star Alliance. Richard.
Thank you very much, Alison. So yes, Star Alliance, I've been working with Star Alliance now for 13 years, but I actually have a career that will enter the 50th year next year, starting mostly in Canada, Air Canada, Canadian Pacific Airlines, United Airlines, and the last time in Star Alliance. So I'm now based in Frankfurt, Germany, have a very interesting outlook on the industry, certainly a global view of the industry. So I'm very pleased to participate in this panel. Insofar as travel goes itself, I've gone around the world a few times, and it's really convinced me that the travel for the future is really the unifier of the people, and it's really a cause for peace. It is my life's work.
Thank you very much, Richard. And in no specific order, John, would you like to give us some of your background and your purpose?
Certainly. Hello, I'm John Hobbs Hurrell from the Wing Global Travel Network. I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. Started off primarily in the travel management operations sector, and now work in the global network arena. That's managing a network of 75 partners in 75 countries around the world. My organisation is owned and managed from the UK and is owned by the Advantage Travel Partnership, a leading UK travel membership organisation from the UK. My purpose really out of all of this is to ensure and support the return of safe travel, delivered through a global network of travel management companies offering local knowledge and access to accredited and safe suppliers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. And last but definitely not least, Robin Sheppard, would you like to give us some ideas about your background and your purpose?
Thank you, Alison. I've been involved in hotel management since the Cold War, and I'm still fighting in the front line. 20 years ago, I set up a business called Bespoke Hotels, which now operates about 100 hotels in the UK and a number overseas, all of which are dedicated to thinking local. So we like local hero hotels. We don't like to homogenize the guest experience, although we do homogenize the way we report the numbers and the structure and the scaffolding that sits behind the hotel. One of my particular peccadillos is the accessibility provision that is made in hospitality environments, and I'll talk about that later if I may. I think that's something we all are learning more about during lockdown.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I'm honoured to be here with all three of you. So I've quoted a few statistics at the beginning of this discussion. And my first question to you, Richard, is how have you sustained yourselves as Star Alliance during the COVID pandemic?
Well, it's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey. Step one, of course, was adjusting to the magnitude of the crisis. We have a lot of short-time work, hiring freezes, cost reductions, trying to limit the amount of billing going back to our member carriers. But the main mantra was to preserve cash. And then step two, of course, was to then understand what was happening around us and adapt to new world thinking. Business as usual was no longer possible, so we had to predict a new world of travel, a new world of doing business, and a changed role for the Alliance in navigating the pandemic. We started out by supporting a UN effort to put together sponsor a film on having people stay home, a home together film, which is really unusual for airlines to encourage that. But now we're really trying to restore confidence in flying, confidence in travel, but it's really a difficult process because we are really bogged down with all the quarantines, and it's very difficult for people to want to travel when they have this risk of being in quarantine. But we've had to really unlearn and relearn some lessons as we go along. And right now, our focus is on accelerating work on technological solutions that would enhance the health and hygiene safety of travelers, to communicate these to them, to provide digital connection services, to have biosecurity commitments from our member carriers to make sure that the onboard experience is as safe as it possibly can be. So these are all the things that we're doing and we continue to do.
And I'm sure, Robin, from the hotelier's point of view, there's a lot of very similar actions that you've had to take there to the airline business. Can you talk a little bit about the changes that you've had to implement over the past 9 months?
Well, don't panic, Captain Mannering, I suppose, has been the mantra. The entire time has been about the preservation of cash and then the safety and health of our staff and our guests and communication with all our stakeholders, whether that's external or internal. Confidence is something that becomes in short supply, and you have to exude it to try and give a sense of comfort and leadership to all those around you, even though you might have as much clue of what's going on as Boris Johnson currently appears to have. From our point of view, it's been a very exacting, but in a bizarre way, quite rewarding situation thus far. And I don't want to sound fake. We've had one incidence of COVID-19 declaration unsuitably isolated amongst all of our staff, and there's 5,000 of them. So that's a moderate comfort. But what we do appear to have achieved is a great bonding amongst our stakeholders, and particularly our senior team managers who could otherwise have really struggled with all the impositions that this lockdown has put upon our lifestyles. But they rallied around great team spirit, and I'm very proud of the way they appear to have steeled their resolve thus far. As we come out, I guess the fear is that it's a bit like deep sea diving. Do we get the bends if we come up too quickly? Do we have to pace the way in which we come out of COVID-19 lockdown for the last time? And whenever it's going to be, is it going to be the 25th of November or some other date when we fully come out of the lockdown? I'm not too sure. And we can all hope that the panacea is going to be the new vaccine treatment. But many lessons we'll have to endure because they've been well learned.
Absolutely. And of course, John, you're coming from a different angle here. Would you like to maybe give us some insight as to how you and your team have travelled through this COVID pandemic so far?
I think, it's been a journey. I think back to the Business Travel Show back in February in London. We were talking about obviously the pandemic or the COVID-19 really being an Asia sort of problem at the time. It hadn't really reached these shores, and no one wrote the script for this. So we've obviously had to really be dynamic in our approach. I mean, I think a different way of working has been it's been the new norm now. Like we're talking today, staying in contact or be it virtually, but creating a sort of community spirit within the network of TMCs, because the one constant with all of this is it's global. Okay, so wherever you are in the world, travel has largely ceased. There are pockets of travel still continuing, but it's been, obviously, we've seen a significant reduction in travel. And one of the things that obviously I've encouraged our membership to try and do is let's look at being creative, looking ahead now, the way we've worked previously, because we're just not going to hit the reset switch and everything's going to come back before, which I think Robin was obviously suggesting as well. It's going to be a slow climb out, and we need to be prepared for that. So I think these types of panels are really good, because I think we're gradually starting to see that there's greater collaboration in the different sectors, whether that be from an airline perspective, hotel perspective, and the TMC. It's about creating that triangle moving forward, that we can all work together to be able to instill some confidence back in travel, and put in sort of the TMC, from my perspective, at the forefront of that, to be able to service the customer moving forward. And I think it's about agility moving forward, but also personalisation, and be able to create the support and comfort for people to start travelling again.
Thank you, John. And this audience may not necessarily know what a TMC is, because we are in a summit that is appealing to many, many different industries. Could you just quickly let us translate your TMC for us?
Apologies, we're used to sort of these analogies in travel, but travel management company is a TMC. It could be named as a travel agent or travel provider, but a travel management company is an organisation that can look after all facets of travel, and we're talking about leisure and corporate here as well. It's not just siloed to one area of travel.
So basically, you'd be a channel of distribution for Star Alliance Airline and Robin's Hotels.
Absolutely.
Great. So as we've said, this time in March, we were all expecting to be at a big trade show in Berlin as well, called ITB, and that has actually been postponed now back to a virtual event. We're just coming out of World Travel Market, so we are at the height of the industry's conversations about the future. And it is difficult to know what the future's bringing, but let's have a go. So, Richard, how do you see the outlook for change coming out of the crisis? The crisis has united. It's probably the only global crisis that's actually united rather against a common cause, rather than have humans fighting against each other, which has to be a good. That's possibly the only good. But how do you see us coming out of this, and what sort of changes do you foresee as an airline company, in particular looking at sustainability?
Yeah, so we're one of several types of travel companies, that airlines, cruise companies, everybody's being devastated by this crisis. As our destination tourism organizations, we always say the world is a small place because we've been able to travel and connect globally very easily, but that's not the case now, and it won't be the case for some time yet. So until we're able to identify and establish a trusted capability for some accredited testing and digital health technology that's actually embedded in the travel experience, we're not going to be able to defeat this blunt instrument that's being used by sovereign states to quarantine people. And that's one of the challenges. So up until now, our ethos has been connecting people with cultures. Star Alliance is an assembly of 26 world-class airlines, the largest airlines in the world. We normally carry about 680 million people a year to 197 countries. And of course, right now, that entire network is broken. So our purpose has really shifted to reconnecting the world. And we're doing our part to adapt technology to try and make that happen.
And I'm going to come back to John on that basis of cruise, airline, train, how and any type of travel really. And of course, you said you straddle business and leisure, as everybody does on the panel. What is your crystal ball saying to you about how what the outlook looks for the changes coming out of COVID, different maybe styles of travel from your clients, your client base, which is global, of course, maybe different ways of booking. Do you have any thoughts on that at the moment?
Well, overwhelmingly, I think the outlook is positive. When I say positive, I don't mean obviously again hitting the reset, button is going to immediately return to travel. I think we're going to see a change in behaviour. I think we need to ensure that we are building confidence and ensuring travellers feel safe throughout the whole experience, and their experience will undoubtedly change on that. But what we are seeing is that there's a lot of questions being asked. What will happen in this scenario? What's happening in this particular market? And I think that's where the importance of a global network comes in, because the media channels are very good at obviously explaining what's going on in the world, but not necessarily the nuances of the local market, the nitty gritty obviously that is required, certain protocols. And for me, overwhelmingly, people have pent up demand to travel. Once you take something away, they want it back. And I genuinely believe if the infrastructure's there and we can provide guidance and on-the-ground support, people will return. And I know that, from talking to my members across the globe, we have cruise bookings for 2021. We have reservations for airlines. The airlines have done a fantastic job, particularly in the US, around communication about the removal of change fees. That's enabled, obviously, a pipeline of new bookings to be created. So I think overall, people want to travel. They want to travel, but they want to be able to be reassured that when they're traveling, that not only will it be personal to them, but the infrastructure's in place that's around accreditation, the steps are in place that every touch point of their journey is covered and creates a safe environment for them. But I believe, obviously, it's a positive outlook. It's pent-up demand. People will travel, but we've just got to create a more collaborative approach and joined up mechanism to ensure that all the touch points are consistent wherever they go.
Thank you. And Robin, of course, with accommodation being your sector, and I believe you have hotels as well as residences, and have just taken over 14 new contracts of management. All that together, you're having to revisit the way you operate your properties in line with COVID. Do you see any of those new introductions continuing post-COVID? Has this made you rethink the way hotels and accommodation is operated?
Well, needs must, I suppose. We've found ourselves in a position we could never have countenanced 6 months ago, let alone a few months ago, and we have had to react. What has surprised us is the strength of the domestic demand for travel, and suddenly Plymouth, extraordinarily, Whitby, Scarborough, Weston-super-Mare. Even I saw the sea at Weston-super-Mare the other day. It's the first time in my lifetime. It's extraordinary that the coastal resorts, which were dying on their feet, suddenly are back in vogue, and people are wanting something that reminds them of their childhood holidays. So I think we're set fair for domestic tourism, with the traditional hotspots, Stratford-upon-Avon, Lake District, Cotswolds, coastal towns and resorts remaining popular. The big issue is going to be in city centres and the urban setting. London is still on its knees, as we all know. And we need some very kindly and sympathetic landlords and fellow stakeholders to support us. One of the biggest issues that we talked about right at the beginning is cash, how to preserve it, how to maintain it. And whilst the meter is off in terms of what we can charge, the meter is still running in terms of what we will be charged in terms of the debt that we've racked up. So expanding for expansion's sake, I don't think is necessarily a good thing. I think we just have to be very cautious, very steady. If you look at the latest report from PwC, they don't think normalized trading conditions will return until 2023, and I think that's about right. So it's a survival strategy to make sure we don't get too optimistic or lose touch with the new reality over the next few years. It's very much steady as she goes, be very prudent in your decision making. And I regret to say, particularly for the younger generation, who are in some ways more affected by this, the level of redundancies will stay high for some time, certainly in the UK market, and we have to accept that we will have a disaffected effect amongst many of our youth.
Absolutely, and with strategies for the future, staycation is I think is predicted to be here for a while, possibly regional travel before long haul travel. And of course, Generation Z is coming up and growing up and warning everybody about the future impact of travel. And we have seen a little bit during COVID how not traveling can actually have a positive environmental impact, although maybe not on a long-term basis. So Richard, coming back to you and looking at strategies for the future, I'm sure Star Alliance, as such an important and global organisation, has been looking at all the different aspects of the future post-COVID and way beyond, especially with programs such as Sir David Attenborough's coming out and warning us about what we are doing to the planet. So what are your strategies for the future, perhaps long-term as well as in the immediate future?
Mm-hmm. So Alison, I will build on the replies from both Robin and John here. I mean, it's really right now hard to see a quick way out. You know, airlines just can't start flying like they did before. Fleets are grounded, deliveries are canceled, people are on furlough, pilots are out of work, they need to be retrained. It's like a giant travel Humpty Dumpty that once it's broken, it's very, very difficult and very painstaking to put back together. So even though we're going to see pent-up demand, there's going to have to be patience because I believe that when it starts to come, it's going to come back definitely booming on the leisure side, but business side for sure, as was said earlier, will be lagging. We're going to see more work from home, although I do believe that, as probably everybody is feeling, you get fatigued working from home. There's no romance in working from home, unless you're really lucky. Romance is travel, and you need to do that. So certainly, now that people have learned, especially business people, that they can work from home or they can work virtually, and especially the lesson learned by company financial controllers, it's really going to be a long time before we get business travel back to where it needs to be. But there is going to be human interaction. Human interaction is core to who we are. Travel is necessary for our soul. And I think that's the key.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that additional response. We have mentioned the potential of a vaccine coming on board in January, and that's very much out there in the news at the moment. And all of the industry has been lobbying for testing on departure or testing on arrival using rapid testing as opposed to laboratory more expensive options and laboratory PCRs. If the vaccine suddenly appeared to be absolutely right, spot on, and everybody was vaccinated in January, and we could all start traveling again, maybe in Q2 of next year. What would your strategy be then to encourage people to travel again? I'm going to come back to you, John, on that one.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. I think the news about the vaccine created obviously a positive ripple. Obviously, stocks and shares started to rise from various sort of transport companies on that news. I think first of all, obviously, it's going to take time to roll that out. So again, it's not going to be this clamour really to get it organised, because I think the whole sort of logistics of the immunisation programme is going to take time. But what I do think is that overall, if you can put the right steps in place, and I think it goes back to what I said earlier. People are going to need guidance with travel. We need a more coordinated approach. Standards do vary from market to market. Expectation, but if there was a coordinated approach, you provided sufficient information and guide people through every step of the journey, then I could see that obviously travel can resume in some shape or form. But I don't necessarily see that obviously the arrival of a vaccination will go back to sort of 2019 numbers. We know that's not going to happen, but I think it will certainly enable certain sectors to commence travelling again. Richard obviously touched on the point about the corporate sector obviously being behind leisure, but I do think that a lot of corporates will work to try and get a travel program together, but they will look at risk versus cost. So what's the risk to my employee? Whereas on the leisure side, people will think, well, I'm set to go. If it means I can travel, I can have this vaccination, I'm going to go. So I think there's different channels to look at here. But overall, I do think that there is a distinct possibility that this will be certainly a start of seeing some return to travel, albeit that all sectors will start at different levels, I think.
And Robin, do you have anything to add on that at all?
Well, there's a couple of paradoxes here. One, if we had to demonstrate to ourselves that we can reduce our carbon footprint at a stroke, we've just proven it. And then as soon as we get well again, we're going to ignore all of that and go back as quickly as we possibly can to ruining our carbon footprint at maximum velocity. So there's a wider discussion, more philosophical discussion that needs to take place with bigger brains than mine to resolve that one. The other issue, of course, is that we are highly likely to be engineering Brexit through a lockdown process. So Calais moves to Kent. Northern Ireland is now part of another universe. We don't care about Northern Ireland anymore. It's just such utter madness taking place internally at a time when we need all global, sorry, borrow the expression, star-like alliances in our universe. We're doing everything we can to turn Great Britain into Little Britain. And I may sound like a Remainer. I don't feel that. I just think the timing is incredibly unfortunate and just one complication too many when we're dealing with such extraordinary circumstances that we could never have anticipated, and then to put this salt and pepper on top to season the dish even further just is utter folly.
Yeah. Can I add to what Robin? Yeah, if I can, I want to be careful here. I don't think the vaccination is going to be the silver bullet. I think this is going to be with us for a while, and then you have to demonstrate: is my vaccine valid? Who gave me the vaccine? How long is it valid for? It's the same issue we have right now with the testing. Is it a PCR test? Is it a swab test? Who is going to accept that? If you have it done in Germany, is it accepted in London? Is it accepted in Singapore? There has to be a process of accreditation that's accepted by sovereign states. And it's the sovereign states ultimately that will make the decisions on whether we're going to reopen our borders. And that's the difficulty. It's going to be a lot of lobbying involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to be coming to an end in a few minutes. And I think we've proven that global brands agree that they need to work together, need to collaborate, need to unite with our industry in order to kickstart it again when we can, and also as sustainably as possible. Do any of you have anything else you'd like to add to the conversation before we close up, wrap up? Yes, Robin, please.
Well, just 2 minutes on the subject of accessibility in hospitality. For those who are able-bodied, lockdown has been a serious diminution of one's rights to travel and restricting your movement. Well, I guess that's what it feels like to be disabled most of the time. I myself have suffered from a paralyzing illness, unfortunately made a partial recovery from, but your dignity goes out of the window, your ability to travel goes out of the window, and your preparedness to travel and impose your shortcomings on others is something. So I hope people during this time of feeling sorry for themselves will realize that there are other people who have to face lockdown throughout their lives, albeit in a different way, and anything we can do to focus on that and establish something better and more positive than the Disabilities Discrimination Act, which has just had its 21st birthday, so that we're dealing with a positive outlook rather than obscuring the negative. I think we should be grateful for. Sorry, it's a bit of a lecture, but I just wanted to
absolutely, and I also believe that everybody has, most people in this world do not understand when they travel regularly what it's like to never have had a holiday ever in your life. And there are millions of people in the UK today and around the world that have never, ever had a holiday in their lives. So there's an awful lot of things that we now appreciate that maybe we didn't appreciate before, and we can build on those positive sides of a very negative situation. John, do you have anything else to add at all that you would like to close with?
I think, if anything that's come out of this is, and I hear what Robin's saying, and I totally respect that as well, that, and what you said as well, Alison, is that, it's been a time, and I think Richard touched on some of it before as well, where you look at your business and you look at, how the industry has operated before. And I think, the industry that I operate in has always demonstrated a level of creativity and resilience. This has certainly challenged them wholeheartedly, and it's obviously no one has a script for this. There's no template so we're working obviously as we go by. But what I have seen is that an appetite, obviously, to look at and diversify. What I mean by that is, say, the introduction of obviously more hybrid type meetings, so a combination of face-to-face and people joining virtually when it comes to meetings and events. I think we're seeing more of that moving forward. But overall, I do believe that, for all the sort of the bullishness that I've demonstrated today about and confidence around travel returning at some point, it has to be measured. And that measure is that, yes, it's going to take time. I think, we are still some time away. Richard made the point about sovereign states having different sort of agreements. It's a minefield for a travel management company to try and advise, a client. But I think the TMC, the travel management company, will take on greater importance moving forward because, they can deliver and offer all facets. But I think travel as a whole, will change. There'll be different elements of travel that won't return immediately. We know that. But I think it's an opportunity also to be creative in the way that we look at travel moving forward.
Yeah, and to finish that off, I think both Robin and John have said what needs to be said, but I think we also, one more thing, need to perhaps not lose sight of how we can use this as an opportunity to rethink travel and tourism. Let's remember, we have only one planet, and we have to think about sustainable travel. So how much can we really handle? Are we smart enough to manage travel and tourism, or are we going to get greedy again? So let's see.
Well, thank you all very, very much. It's been a very insightful discussion, and I'm sure the audience will take away an awful lot of important issues and think those through. I do hope that the UNWTO and WTTC work as closely together as they are at the moment to ensure that we do get global protocols, not just on COVID, but global protocols on travel in the future, because that's another positive that could come out of our negative situation, that the world works together more closely. Thank you, Richard, thank you, Robin, and thank you, John. I look forward to seeing you again in person very shortly. I know that would mean, Richard, that you would need to fly over to the UK to see us, but that would be even more of a positive result from having you coming over from Germany, and to Robin and John and I meeting up in London again. So thank you very much, and have a lovely day. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.